So, bank accounts. Here we go. People that think they're smart again, but Papa Richard Hart has to educate them. Okay? People think that when you put your money into a bank, they lend your money out and they make interest, and then you get some of that interest. Doesn't happen. Doesn't work like that. Wait a second, Richard. Are you telling me that when I put my money in the bank, that it doesn't get lent out? Yes, that is what I'm telling you. Oh, well then how does the bank make money? Well, I know, and most people listening don't, unless you've been listening to me for a while. The bank is going to keep your money, which is a liability to them, not an asset. It goes on the liability side of their balance sheet. They owe it. It's not theirs. They owe it. And they're going to use that money as a reserve to go get leveraged up 10 times more, nearly free money from the government. Because the government prints money out of thin air. And they want banks to stimulate the economy by creating new money. This is called a money multiplier effect. When one person spends $1, it creates about $7 of economic activity. It's basically the majority of money is created from credit. So if I say I'll paint your house for $100, which is a good deal, let's make it more expensive. Let's call it $1,000. You got a small house. Let's say I'm going to paint your house for $1,000. And then you say, okay, well, I'll pay you when it's done. And I start painting your house. Well, in effect, that work and GDP, gross domestic production, and effort in making the world better, it has already occurred. I'm doing it. I'm doing the work. And so in effect, the money was created even though it wasn't paid yet. And then I, because I have a receivable, can then factor my receivable and sell it to somebody else and go, this guy that I'm painting his house for owes me 1,000. So why don't you give me like 800 and you can make the difference, but I'll have my 800 now instead of waiting for him to give me my 1,000. It's called factoring. So the majority of money in the economy is really just created out of credit, and these things banks do. So when the bank gives you a loan, it creates money out of thin air. And the government's already creating money out of thin air as well. So you deposit your $100,000 at the bank. Now they have a $100,000 reserve, which lets them borrow $1 million or more, maybe $20 million, depending on the reserve ratio. So 10% reserve ratio allow them to borrow from the government $10 million. And what do you think the bank is going to make more money on? Lending out $10 million or lending out your $1 million? They're going to make more money lending out the $10 million because the interest rates that the government gives them are so low. So now, in fact, the yield that you're being paid for putting your money in the bank is not for lending your money out, because your money's not going to get lent out. Your money is just going to sit there as an excuse for the government to go, oh, well, we like reserve ratios, and the banks that have larger reserve ratios will just lend more money to. Right? Oh, you've got $1 million reserve instead of $10,000 reserve. We're going to lend you, 1,000x more money or 100x more money. Now, how many people know that? How many people in the whole world know that when you put your money in a bank, it doesn't get lent out? Almost nobody, because I'm the only guy spreading the idea. I'm the only guy spreading the truth. So where does the yield come from? Inflation. Well, where's the inflation? The government literally just prints the money out of thin air. They print the money out of thin air. Your yield at your bank is from people printing the money out of thin air. Your yield in the stock market is also mostly them printing the money out of thin air. When they print all this money, it has to go somewhere. Where does it go? Places where it doesn't lose to inflation, where it can get yield. Okay, well, where's the only place large enough to park these trillions of dollars that they printed? The stock market. And so what happens? The stock market goes to new all-time highs because the money has to go somewhere. Same with crypto. Stock market makes new all-time highs. Crypto makes new all-time highs. Why? Because people are looking for places to park their capital to beat inflation. Because look, even though what you have is going up in value, if all the stuff that you want to buy also went up in price, you just broke even. So if you didn't double like a lot of these watches that are sitting here are costing twice what they cost from the factory, and they're permanently sold out. So if you want them, you got to pay 2 to 3 times what they cost from the factory. Now, most watches lose money. Watches I buy, they don't. So your yield in the stock market is the next guy buying. It's called the greater fool theory, but I don't like calling him that because these guys make all the money. How are you going to call them fools when they make all the money? The most profitable people in the world are the fools that have been buying these things at inflated prices because they get more inflated. So, you'd be hard pressed when everything's at new all-time highs to have bought at the wrong time because everything's at new all-time highs. Stock market's new all-time highs. Crypto in April 16th was the Bitcoin top. 27 days later was the Ethereum top. Hex is making new all-time highs all the time. I think it was just a week or two, maybe 2 weeks ago. It did it last all-time high, I think. I mean, for all I know, it might be an all-time high now while I'm on stream. I'll go look. 19 cents, real close to an all-time high. Our all-time high was 21.8, 21.9 rounded, and now we're at 19. So we're like this close to an all-time high now in hex.com. So where else do people not know where the yield comes from? So now I've told you where the yield comes from in stocks, the next guy buying higher. I've told you where the yield comes from in bank accounts, inflation, printing money out of thin air. Where does the yield come from for Bitcoin miners? Bitcoin miners have been, every single coin that exists in the world in Bitcoin passed through the hands of a Bitcoin miner because they minted it out of thin air. I know because I was a Bitcoin miner and I used to mine full 50 Bitcoin block reward blocks with no pool, no middlemen, no counterparty risk. Me and my GPU, we would mine full 50 Bitcoin block rewards on our own, mint 50 Bitcoin out of thin air. 50 Bitcoin now is worth about $25 million, $2.5 million. 50 Bitcoin is 2.5 million, I think. Yeah. So where does the yield come from? The next guy buying higher. That's where the yield comes from. Ethereum used to be 31 cents at its crowd sale. Now it's $3,300. That's a 10,000x. Why is Ethereum 10,000x up higher in price? Where does the yield come from? The next guy buying higher. The same place it comes from in stocks. The same place it comes from in Bitcoin. Why has Hex price gone up 4,000 fold in a year and a half before interest, before staking, and 6,000 to 9,000 fold with staking interest? How can it do that? Because the next guy's buying higher. That's it. Like, I don't understand why people don't get this. Their brains don't understand that all of the yield from everything is basically from inflation. Bitcoin miners' revenue is from inflating the Bitcoin supply. Your savings deposit yield as a saver in a bank comes from the Fed inflating the supply. The yield of, what was it? It was banks, stocks, crypto. Yeah, those are the three. I mean, where else is there yield that we need to talk about? So, I mean, yeah. And then, is it stupid for the next guy to buy higher? Well, I don't know. Bitcoin's up 6.5 million X from a penny in around 10 years. Ethereum's up 10,000x. Hex is up 4,000x. Is it stupid to be the guy that bought higher?